back to my YouTube channel. My name is Alyssa. This is my dad.
Tyson.
And today we're going to be filming a video where I ask my dad questions that girls are too afraid to ask guys. If you subscribe when we reach 1,000 subscribers,
She's gonna go skydiving.
yeah, so please hit that subscribe button before it gets to winter because I don't want icicles hanging out of my nose while I'm skydiving. Our first question today is, why do guys feel like they need a girlfriend to be happy?
That's a good question. First of all, guys are really, in many ways, a lot of them feel a lot of distance socially. You know, men, even when they form friendships, they're kind of almost sort of at a distance. And for a lot of guys, the only person they will really end up being close to is a woman. And that's because guys kind of always have relationships with each other at this kind of arm's length thing. And so that's one reason why a lot of guys feel like they need a relationship with a woman. That's the only way they feel like they're going to have an emotional connection. And yet they can sometimes even be a little avoidant of that connection.
Right.
And then the other reason is I think, guys in general are kind of really concerned about how they look in terms of strength to other guys.
Yeah.
And whether it's something like a job or a car or money or some intelligence or some other achievement or a woman, it's also about how they look and how they're perceived, their strength in general.
I've noticed that there's like this mentality with guys that they can only be vulnerable with their woman, and even then, their idea of vulnerability is nowhere near what I view as vulnerability with my close friends. It's actually made me kind of sad sometimes because they seem like really closed off and there's like no one they can talk to because it's weird if you talk to someone.
Yeah, well, this kind of gets into a whole question of the way guys think and the way guys are socialized. But there really is this, everybody's at a distance and we have to be very strong and very self-sufficient and independent. As a society, that's kind of what we expect from guys.
Yeah.
And in some ways, that's a good thing. But it also means that a lot of guys don't know how to be vulnerable because they've never really been socialized to be that, and they don't know how to do that.
What is more important, a physical connection or an emotional connection?
Ooh, actually, this is a favorite for me. So the physical connection, I believe, is always kind of limited. And it's great to have the physical connection, but it does kind of have its limits, and in some ways it can be very shallow. Whereas the emotional connection can really be deep and can really expand over your whole lifetime. And so I think there are a lot of guys, maybe especially young guys, who kind of get it wrong. And what seems easy and obvious is the physical connection.
Yeah.
And especially if they are not in a place where they know how to handle the emotional connection, they're probably missing out on the better side of the equation.
If you're just doing it to get your own pleasure out of it, that really is such a crappy thing to do. It's such a selfish thing, and when you're emotionally connected to someone, it's for both of your benefit.
Yeah.
And so both of you feel good.
Absolutely.
But good about each other too. It's really such like an intimate, like vulnerable moment too, like physical connection. And I feel like nowadays it's not as personal anymore, which is really sad because I think that in many ways it should still be very personal.
Yeah, we've made it into a transaction.
Yeah.
And if you're missing out on, it's supposed to be a connection and a relationship. And if you don't really have those, you don't really have it.
So,
next question.
Yes, our next question is, what is the biggest red flag in a girl?
There are all kinds of things that come to mind. I actually wrote a list of red flags, and I think what it kind of comes down to is somebody who I can't connect with emotionally. And whether that is because she is just unable to, for any variety of reasons, or whether we can't. I've been on dates before where there's somebody who I really admire and I do see good things in them, and yet it's like we together can't find a way to really connect in a way that. Yeah, and you think of one person in particular.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and she's not the only one, but
no.
But then on the other hand, relationships where we really do connect, that's the biggest thing. And even if I were to find somebody totally wonderfully and amazing and beautiful, but I can't connect with her emotionally, then it's just like, sorry, it has to be over. Another big red flag for me that is a relationship ender no matter what is somebody who would lie to me about who she is in order to somehow get something else out of the relationship.
Right.
if there's any kind of material lie that comes up that is meant to hide herself in some way, that's a deal breaker for me.
I get the emotional disconnect. I've had that on a couple of dates where it just, like, there's this disconnect. Like, you can tell that there's something deeper to them, you just can't get to it. Like, either they're not willing and vulnerable enough to show it to you, or you're not the right type of person that they connect with, which is like a really weird feeling where you can tell they're trying to connect and you're also trying to connect, but you don't connect together. You just don't fit.
Yeah, right.
It's like,
and you both know there's a lot there, but it's a miss.
Yeah, and it's like, I just don't feel it.
I'll have to admire you from afar.
I guess so. Goodbye.
Yeah.
What is your biggest ick?
Ick?
It's the modern way of saying, what's your biggest turnoff?
Oh.
Ick is like, it's less severe than a red flag. Like, for example, she chews with their mouth open. It's like a pet peeve.
Yeah, I would say somebody without manners and etiquette,
Yes.
Like just kind of just coarse mannered, be like, yeah, I'm sorry, not for me. For me, an emotional connection with the person I'd like a partnership with is most important. But then there's the other part too. I want somebody that I can have an intellectual relationship with as well.
Yeah.
And I've met women who do really well on the emotional, but I can't have a reasonable intellectual conversation with them. And it doesn't mean they need to be brain surgeons, right? But if I can't engage with them on that level, even if they're a great person, I have to say that's kind of a turnoff. Yeah,
I think you have to be on the same level of IQ as another person to really get along with them. Not saying that you're maybe smarter than most people or dumber than most people, but it's a scale. And if I'm here and someone's here, there's gonna be a disconnect because I can't really have a good conversation. And me personally, I really like reading and do a lot of self-help books. I go to the gym and I like learning. And sometimes when I've been on dates where I can just tell a guy isn't motivated or he doesn't really do much to better himself, it really does show. Do guys like pet names?
Meaning, do I like it when a woman has a pet name for me?
Yeah, kind of like Boo or Baby or Waffle, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess, I haven't had a lot of pet names. Here's kind of funny. Here's one pet name I don't like is Dear, because that's what my mom and dad always call each other.
Yes.
And sometimes it was very nice and sweet, and sometimes it was like, okay, dear. So I would never want that for a pet name.
It's an ick
I think for me, maybe. I think I like pet names, especially that kind of come up in some kind of context where it's kind of an us thing, right?
Yes.
Or something special about our relationship.
But no, I get what you're saying about the dear. I don't like that either.
Right.
I love you, Grandma and Grandpa, but it's just a you thing. What is the most attractive thing a girl can do?
Oh, that's a difficult one. When she appears confident and independent, it shows me she's interested too. That for me is a real turn on.
I'm sure. I mean, you don't want someone who's unstable and clingy. That's a huge turn off.
Right,
for me.
or totally standoffish to where it's like, I don't even know if I can flirt with you,
Yeah, you have to go in there with a chisel and pick,
Yeah, you don't want that. And to take care of herself, I guess.
Yeah. I really hate it when people don't take care of themselves. It bothers me.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of little subtle things. If I showed up to a social event and there's this girl with kind of greasy hair who's dressed up in sweats, I'm not gonna go talk to her.
No. And it's kind of funny, but I grew up in I absolutely cannot stand when I don't change out of my pajamas. Even if I'm sick, even if I'm feeling terrible, if I'm feeling so bad to where I'm just sleeping all day, I don't care. But if I'm conscious but sick, I have to change outfits.
Oh, for me, if I'm sick, I'm gonna claw my way to the bathroom and take a shower.
Well, it's funny because taking care of yourself even while you're sick makes you feel just that much better.
Yeah.
Are opposite sex friendships okay?
I think the level of friendship matters a lot. And I think it also matters how transparent you are with your partner. So there's kind of I think sort of a spectrum of acquaintance to a very informal friend to
We've talked
maybe
about this before.
Yeah, we have casual friends, close friends, and then and I kind of think of it like an onion. I know that's what I said to you before, right?
Onion.
And so your spouse or partner needs to be right there in the center of that onion, right? And especially when it comes to the opposite genders, any sort of friendship you have really needs to be way on the other extreme of that onion.
Yes.
And, you know, having acquaintances is okay. Having an informal friend is kind of dangerous territory. Having a close friend, I think, chips away at the relationship. Especially if we think of a relationship that's having sort of a unique emotional connection that bonds us together. Anytime you are spending emotional time with somebody else, it really puts that first relationship in danger. You know, I read a book once that had this topic, and it kind of described it as, you know, all of us are kind of like in our own rooms, and we have a choice between people, like how wide we want to open that window, whether it's like a little portal or whether it's like a whole wall window.
Yeah.
And what you want to do is open that up as wide as you can with your partner, and still maintain strength on your own, but really kind of be vulnerable and really open with your partner. With everybody else, though, it should be a very small window, especially the opposite gender.
What qualities do guys look for in a girl?
Partly what guys are looking for in a girl kind of depends partly on their maturity. I think when we're young, we are looking for somebody who, kind of like at the worst end of the spectrum, right? We want somebody who satisfies our needs. We want somebody who is attractive and social and everything we dream about. And I think as we get older, we realize that there should be a lot more to this connection. And it's not only about what my partner does for me, but about what we are together. If I want somebody who's emotionally stable, I need to be emotionally stable. If I want somebody who's financially stable, I need to be financially stable.
Yes.
And if I want somebody who can handle my vulnerability, then I need to be able to handle her vulnerability too.
Yes.
And when you have all those things together in the way you need them, it actually provides so much for the relationship in both directions, and the attraction comes a lot more naturally.
Yes. I've been in therapy for 6 or 7 years now. It's been a long time. But something I discovered is that every once in a while I would get what I would call a boyfriend craving. And at this point, I had never really had a relationship. I had just seen what relationships look like in movies or through my friends or my family. And so I think I really fantasized it and idealized it. But I was curious one day, I realized, I was like, why am I having this boyfriend craving like every once in a while? What is it that's making me want to have a boyfriend right now, to want to be in a relationship? And I found out that sometimes when these boyfriend cravings would come up, it was because I was lacking something myself, or I wasn't doing something for myself that I wanted someone else to step in and do for me. And that was a really hard realization to come to, because, you know, I don't want to look for a relationship to make me a whole. I want to be a whole by myself and have my partner be, you know, 1 + 1 = 2. You're supposed to add to each other, not just barely make each other whole.
Yeah, so some of the statements I've written down for myself are, I'm a whole person and my partner's a whole person, and together we create something wonderful.
Can a relationship work when there are two different religious views?
It depends on a variety of factors. I think one is how strongly you hold to your religion. If you were born and raised a certain religion, but it doesn't really matter much to you, like maybe there's some basic beliefs in place, but it's not a matter of strict religious observance on either side, then maybe it's important to understand that sometimes you won't feel that when you're younger, and then you'll come back to it later, but if both of you are essentially not committed to your religion, then it probably doesn't matter as much.
Right.
But then there's also the factor of how close those religions are.
Yes.
For example, if you're Jewish and you're Muslim coming together, that may be a lot more problematic than, say, two Christian denominations that are really close.
I guess it also depends on like standards and morals that come from what you believe religiously as well.
Right, and that kind of speaks to the first question too. If you're very strongly, devout to religious values, then it's going to be harder for you to compromise on certain things that maybe your partner doesn't believe in, doesn't want. How you look at moral questions and have those aligned values is really important regardless of religion.
If you decide to have kids together, it even has a bigger impact on how you raise your kids.
Yeah.
Because there's things that you're willing to let go of in a relationship and just be like, that's them.
You
But
have
when you
to.
raise
You have to be
kids,
flexible.
when you raise kids, you have to be together on how things are going to be done and how you're going to raise them, what you teach them.
Yeah.
You have to be
Yeah.
very together on that.
Because I think, especially once you have kids, you realize that that is probably the most important thing you're ever going to do. And that suddenly matters a lot.
Should guys pay for the date?
I know that this is a hotly debated topic in some circles,
Yes.
but I still believe that there's a lot to the traditional male-female values that really makes sense and rings true to me. And some people may have some very kind of alternative views. But in general, I think, especially for the first, couple, few, whatever dates,
Uh-huh.
I still believe that the male should generally be asking and paying for it.
The way I view it is if you ask, you pay. So it's very rare that girls make the first move, but it's also just very crappy if you make the first move and then expect the other person to pay entirely.
Right.
Like, okay, 50-50, sure. What is the hottest sport a girl can play?
That's a good question.
Think about your girlfriend. Which uniform would you want to see her in?
Yeah, I'm not much into sports, so
I'm
I
not
guess
either.
I don't know.
You don't want to see her in a cute tennis skirt? A lot of guys say tennis because they have the cute skirts.
Yeah,
And
I
the
could
rackets.
see that.
Some guys say volleyball because,
And my
shorts,
present
tank
girlfriend is
top.
all I'm thinking about. I think she'll look cute in just about anything.
We'll leave that as just about any sport is probably attractive.
Sure.
The next question is, how do you know when a guy likes you?
Ooh, that's a good question. That kind of depends on the guy too.
But in general.
In general, I think it's when guys like to play hard to get a little bit too. But generally, if he keeps on showing interest in you, and maybe it's small and subtle things, but I think he'll try to do it in a way that he knows that it's like it should be kind of obvious that this is aimed at you.
Really?
When those kinds of things happen, right? Whether it's something like compliments or little flirting comments, when you know that it's directed at you as opposed to like just for fun for everybody,
Right.
then you can be sure he likes you. And also the amount of times you find him looking your way, that matters too. Asking your friends about you, that's a sure sign.
Really?
Oh,
They
yeah.
ask your friends about you?
Or may just ask general questions like,
Well, I guess
even
girls
from their
do that
friends,
too.
But if you hear when your girl's saying, he was asking about blah, 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 blah.
He asked
You're
if you were single.
you're right. Yes, exactly.
I think girls do the same thing because there was a guy I was interested in like a while back when I worked at Olive Garden, and I went up and asked one of my friends who was closer to him. She was like good friends with him. I was like, so do you know if he's single? And she got all excited. She's like, yes, he is. Would you like me to set you guys up? I was like, no, shh, stop, shut it down.
Not yet.
No makeup or makeup?
Good question. I think in general, guys do prefer girls wearing makeup, especially in a dating situation. And some of that has to do with tradition and what we consider attractive and what we consider people taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
Right? In some ways, just from a very humanistic point of view, it's kind of unfair that girls have to wear makeup.
Right. I
Right?
would agree.
But on the other hand, I think guys generally do appreciate the woman making the effort to look nice, since it is kind of customary, right?
Yeah, I think the
And
guys
same
can
thing for like
tell.
shaving too, right?
Yeah, I think the guys can tell when a girl puts on and does their makeup well. They can tell the amount of effort you've put in for them.
Yeah.
So I think that's also another thing. Is like it's not just about how the makeup makes you look, but it's what's kind of like message it sends to
Exactly.
your date.
It's a signal of a different kind,
Yes.
even if it's right. And same thing for guys. With guys, it's different, but you expect a guy to do his hair nice, to dress nice,
Put on his cologne, maybe.
and deodorant. Just saying,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Now this next question is: are guys aware of a girl's boobs when they hug them?
Unless he's really dumb, yes. Generally we're aware of them. Sometimes it's like, well, first of all, there are the kind of what I call shoulder hugs, where you're like hugging in such a way that your chest never touch and it's not an issue, right?
Yeah.
And that's really probably best
Or
for
side
most circumstances, right? Side hugs, right? That works well too. And then, you'll get close hugs. Sometimes it's like from family, and of course that way it's not, if my aunt gives me a hug, I might notice that she's bigger chested than some of my other relatives, but not in a weird
Right.
sexual way, right?
I think
So
I would
you can-
notice that too.
Right.
If my
Yeah, naturally.
Yeah.
Especially when you both got something. Right.
So, do guys like it when girls make the first move?
That is a good question. I can't speak for all guys, but I think guys do like it when a woman shows interest. But I think generally men do like to feel like they are doing their part as men too, right?
That would make sense.
Yeah, so, and like a lot of things, maybe there's some degree of mutual that has to happen.
Yeah.
Also as a guy, I hate a relationship where I feel like I have to do all the work. Like maybe she's not really interested,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As a guy, I don't mind being asked out. I want to take some action too as the man.
Why do some guys cheat instead of breaking up with their partner?
I wish I understood what was going on in everybody's minds.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it comes down to selfishness and thoughtlessness. I think a lot of times people are not even aware enough of their own emotional well-being and aren't mindful enough to realize why they're getting into a relationship, and they're being too thoughtless about it. And then, there's those masculine influences we talked about earlier. If I lose a girlfriend, that looks bad for me.
I never thought about that before.
And which is selfish, right?
Right.
And then there's also that whole thing of looking strong and being independent, and to some degree my own image of myself or somebody else's image of me is somehow enhanced in a very selfish way if I can attract more women. And all of that thinking to me is very distorted and skewed, right? I think all people, including men, ought to be accountable to their partners for what they do. And, in a lot of cases, they really do love their partner. They're just acting selfishly and mindlessly. And what they need to do, if they do make such a mistake, is really be mindful about what they really do stand on the relationship. Mm-hmm. And then do the right thing with it.
Right.
And turn their behavior around. In any number of ways, if they want to be honest with themselves that it actually isn't a good relationship for them, they should get out of it.
Yes.
On the other hand, if they really messed up and they're ready to kind of own up to it and do something different, then they need to do that. And they need to realize that they just have damaged their partner in a way that they will not understand. And they need to try and go through heroic efforts to make amends for that.
Maybe the motivation for cheating comes from wanting to have your cake and eat it too. Some guys just aren't satisfied with their relationship and they're like, what if? Do you think that's a reason sometimes?
Oh, yeah. And I think there's always something exciting about the newness of a relationship, right?
Yeah.
The initial
Like the honeymoon
flirting,
phase.
right, and all the excitement that comes along with the adrenaline shift. That's something exciting, and it can be even further enhanced by the secrecy of the relationship. Right. But once again, that kind of comes back to, are you being honest with yourself about your motivations?
Right.
If it's about excitement, if it's about lust, if it's about grasping around the other side, all of those are at some fundamental level being dishonest with yourself and your partner.
And the last question for today is, does the modern dating scene scare you? It scares me.
Absolutely. A lot of places end up becoming, places to hook up rather than to have real relationships. And I think people do themselves a lot of damage by hooking up rather than being in a real relationship.
Yeah.
Damage to others. That is something you really can't undo. You need to be very thoughtful about those relationships. The casual approach to sex and morals is something that I just don't agree with, and I think it's very harmful to people.
I would agree.
And I think that's something that, whether it's the way that relationships are depicted in movies and media and things like that, or whether it's, the little acronyms we all know that are signaling I'm free for a hookup.
Yes.
All that I think is just tremendously, it really devalues relationships.
So the camera died, but we wanted to say thank you guys so much for watching. This was an amazing interview. Thank you, Dad, for being here.
Thank you for bringing me on as a guest interviewee. Can we call it that?
I don't know. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Remember to subscribe, because as soon as I reach 1,000 subscribers,
She's going skydiving.
yes. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye.